You are currently being harvested like a crop in a field you thought you owned, and the scariest part isn't the systematic theft of your life's work. It's that you are still standing in line, clutching your loyalty card, thanking the thief for the crumbs falling from the table of the elite. Welcome back to the Awakened Seal. Look around you, America, and I mean really look, past the flickering distractions of your smartphone and the scripted outrage of the evening news, because what you are witnessing in 2026 is not a recession. It is not a rough patch in the business cycle, and it is certainly not an accident of history. It is the controlled demolition of the American middle class, a cold-blooded, mathematically precise liquidation of the only group of people on this planet who possessed enough independence to actually threaten the architects of the New World Order. For decades, you were sold a dream of a white picket fence, a stable 401k, and the promise that if you just worked hard enough and played by the rules, you could secure a future for your children. But those rules were written by the very people who are now burning the rule book in front of your face. We have entered the era of the Great Squeeze, where the financial alchemy of the Federal Reserve and the predatory hunger of Wall Street have combined to turn your sovereignty into a liability. The middle class was the backbone of this nation. But backbones are difficult to control. They are rigid, they provide structure, and they allow a body to stand tall, which is exactly why the technocratic elite decided that the American backbone had to be snapped. They are replacing the owner class with a user class, a permanent underclass of high-tech serfs who own nothing, produce everything, and pay for the privilege of existing in a world they no longer control. Think about the house you think you own. Is it really yours when the property taxes are essentially a never-ending rent payment to the state? Or when investment giants like BlackRock and Vanguard are using the printed money from the Fed to outbid your children for every single family home in the country? They are turning the American dream into a subscription service where your shelter, your transportation, and even your ability to communicate are rented back to you at prices that are designed to keep you exactly one paycheck away from total ruin. This is the subscription model of slavery, where the chains aren't made of iron but of debt, interest rates, and the constant threat of being deplatformed from the economy itself. By 2026, the illusion of the free market has been replaced by a corporate cartel system where 3 or 4 companies own everything from the seeds in the ground to the satellites in the sky, and you are nothing more than a data point to be optimized and exploited. The dollar you hold in your hand is a ticking time bomb, a fiat illusion that has lost 98% of its value since the inception of the Fed, but the final 2% is being drained right now in a desperate attempt to fund a dying empire and a bloated military-industrial complex that thrives on perpetual war. Every time they print $1 trillion to fund a conflict on the other side of the world, they are reaching into your pocket, stealing the hours of your life you spent earning that money, and handing it over to the weapon manufacturers and the central bankers. This is the ultimate invisible tax, a karmic theft that punishes the thrifty and rewards the corrupt, ensuring that the middle class can never accumulate enough capital to truly be free. They want you distracted by the red versus blue pantomime, screaming at your neighbor about things that don't matter while they quietly install the plumbing for a central bank digital currency that will make your current financial struggles look like a picnic. With a CBDC, your money isn't money. It's a permission slip that can be programmed with an expiration date or restricted based on your carbon footprint or your political compliance. Imagine trying to buy gas in 2026 and being told your social credit score is too low because you posted a misinformation link on social media the night before. This is the level of granular control they are building. And they are using the economic collapse they created as the justification to save you with this digital prison. The education system was the first line of attack, turning the prestigious halls of learning into debt factories that produce compliant employees with massive student loans before they even earn their first dollar, effectively indenturing an entire generation before they even know what freedom feels like. Then came the healthcare ransom, where a single medical emergency can wipe out 30 years of middle-class savings, transferring that wealth directly into the coffers of the insurance cartels and big pharma. It is a systematic extraction of vitality, a vampiric process where the state and its corporate partners feed on the labor, the health, and the future of the American family. They have hollowed out the small towns, destroyed the local businesses through lockdowns and regulations that only the mega corporations can afford to follow, and left behind a landscape of dollar generals and fentanyl-ridden streets. This isn't mismanagement. It's an autopsy of a living civilization. You see the chaos in the cities, the rising crime, the breakdown of the nuclear family, and you think it's a sign of failure. But to the architects, it's a sign of success because a traumatized, fractured population is easier to manage than a cohesive, prosperous one. They are weaponizing your own empathy against you, telling you that your declining standard of living is a sacrifice for equity or the climate, while they fly private jets to gated estates and feast on resources they tell you are scarce. The truth is that there is no scarcity of resources, only a monopoly on access. The petrodollar that once gave America its unearned privilege is crumbling as the BRICS nations move to an era of real commodities, leaving the U.S. middle class to hold the bag of a devalued currency and a mountain of national debt that can never be repaid. We are living through the controlled demolition of the West, and if you are still looking to Washington, D.C. for a savior, you are looking at the arsonist to put out the fire. The political leaders are just the actors on the stage, hired to keep the audience entertained while the stagehands dismantle the theater and steal the seats from under you. They use the bread and circuses of the 21st century, the sports, the celebrities, the viral outrage, to keep your brain in a state of constant dopamine looping so you don't notice the tectonic plates of the world economy shifting beneath your feet. By 2026, the middle class has been priced out of its own country, becoming strangers in a land their ancestors built, forced to compete with an unlimited supply of cheap labor and automated AI systems that don't ask for raises or health insurance. This is the Great Leveling, where the goal is to make the American worker just as desperate and dependent as a sweatshop worker in a third-world nation, creating a global equilibrium of poverty under a unified technocratic management. You are being told that the gig economy is freedom, but it's actually the return of piece-rate labor without the protections of a union or the stability of a salary, a world where you are only as valuable as your last 5-star rating. The psychological toll of this uncertainty is immense, creating a society of anxious, medicated individuals who are too tired to revolt and too broken to imagine an alternative. This is the alchemy of submission, where they turn your spirit into lead by weighing it down with the impossible cost of survival. But there is a logic to this madness. A dark, perverted logic that dictates that for a new world order to rise, the old world must be burnt to the ground, and the middle class is the largest obstacle to that new world because you still remember what it was like to be an individual with agency. They are trying to unsoul the American public, replacing traditional values with a hollowed-out corporate morality that changes every time the wind blows, leaving you with nothing to stand on when the storm hits. Every policy, from the zoning laws that prevent you from growing your own food to the digital IDs disguised as safety measures, is a brick in the wall of your future enclosure. They are closing the exits, America, and they are doing it while smiling and telling you it's for your own protection. The systematic destruction of the middle class is a ritual of power, a way for the elite to prove that they can take everything you have and you will still beg them for a solution. They are testing your breaking point, seeing how far they can push the inflation, the taxes, and the surveillance before the sovereign citizen finally snaps. But here is the secret they don't want you to know. Their entire system of control is built on your belief in their illusions, and once that belief is gone, they have nothing but a house of cards. The middle class has the power to stop this tomorrow by simply withdrawing their consent, by building parallel economies, by opting out of the fiat trap, and by reconnecting with the reality of the land and the spirit. But they have done a brilliant job of making you feel small, making you feel like a victim of market forces instead of a target of a planned operation. The year 2026 is the point of no return, where the debt interest alone is consuming the taxes of the people, leaving nothing for the actual infrastructure of the country, leading to a state of third world America, where the elite live in high-tech bubbles and the rest struggle for clean water and reliable electricity. You see the signs already, the crumbling bridges, the flickering grids, the train derailments, and you think it's just bad luck. But it's the inevitable result of an economy that has stopped investing in its people and started harvesting them for its final liquidation. This is the harvest of the human soul, the final act of a drama that began over a century ago with the creation of the central banks. They have taken your gold, they have taken your land, and now they are coming for your mind and your very biology, attempting to turn the human being into a hackable animal, as some of their own advisors have so arrogantly put it. But as we stand on the precipice of this total destruction, a new frequency is emerging, a frequency of those who see the game for what it is and refuse to play, those who are unsealing their own eyes and preparing for a world that exists outside the digital panopticon. You are not a victim of history unless you choose to be, and the first step to survival in 2026 is realizing that the world you were told to prepare for no longer exists. The systematic destruction of the middle class is the fertilizer for a new, more dangerous type of freedom. But before we can talk about how to build that future, we have to go deeper into the darkest part of their plan, the part they don't even talk about at their secret meetings in Davos. A plan that involves the very restructuring of what it means to be a human being and the final trap that is being set for your children's children. A trap so subtle and so alluring that most people will walk into it with a smile on their face, and it is this terrifying bio-digital endgame that I will lay bare in the next part of this analysis, because once you see what they have planned for your very DNA, you will never look at your smart devices or your convenient life the same way again. Are you ready to see the final seal being broken? Wait until you hear what's coming next, because the theft of your money was just the beginning. The theft of your humanity is the goal. You thought the theft of your bank account was the end game, but you failed to realize that in the eyes of the architects of 2026, your currency was never just the dollar. It was your very autonomy, your biological data, and the frequency of your submission. So welcome back to the Awakened Seal, where we peel back the skin of reality to reveal the predatory machinery humming beneath the surface of American society. We have transitioned from a world of physical borders to a world of algorithmic enclosures, where the American middle class is being herded into a high-tech feudalism that makes the medieval serfs look like pioneers of freedom, because the systematic destruction we see today is not merely about empty wallets. It is about the obsolescence of the individual human spirit in favor of a collective, managed hive mind. Let's talk about the so-called 15-minute cities, those urban planning utopias being sold to you under the guise of convenience and environmental stewardship, which are in reality the blueprints for a decentralized prison system where your permit to travel beyond your designated zone is dictated by a carbon score that fluctuates based on what you eat, what you buy, and how loudly you complain about the government on encrypted apps that aren't actually encrypted. This is the spatial manifestation of the Great Reset, a deliberate dismantling of the American tradition of the open road and the frontier spirit, replaced by a geo-fenced existence where your proximity to a grocery store is a leash, not a luxury, as the middle class is being squeezed out of the suburbs, those bastions of privacy and land ownership, and forced into dense, smart grid hubs where every flick of a light switch and every flush of a toilet is a data point fed into a central artificial intelligence that determines your utility to the state. We are witnessing the birth of the bio-digital convergence, where the line between your physical body and the digital network dissolves, and if you think this is conspiracy, you haven't been paying attention to the frantic push for digital health IDs and wearable tech that monitors your biochemistry in real time. By 2026, the elite realized that controlling your mind through television was too slow. They needed to control your nervous system through the infrastructure of daily life, using the inflation we discussed in Part 1 as a dual-purpose tool that makes you too poor to resist and too desperate to care about the fine print of the solutions they offer. When you can't afford eggs, you don't ask questions about the biometric sensor required to access the subsidized food pantry, which is the ultimate bait and switch. A karmic trap where the collective greed for safety and equity has led us to a state of total surveillance. The political theater in Washington is now a holographic distraction, a pantomime designed to keep you arguing about pronouns while the technocracy quietly installs the plumbing for a social credit system that will make dissent a physical impossibility, weaponizing your empathy against you by telling you that your sacrifice of privacy is a moral duty to the greater good. But who defines that good? Certainly not the family in Ohio losing their farm to eminent domain, nor the small business owner in Florida being taxed into non-existence to fund a digital infrastructure that will eventually replace them, because the American middle class was the only thing standing in the way of a global neo-feudal order. The middle class had the resources to be independent, the education to be skeptical, and the property to be rooted, so by obliterating them, they are removing the friction from their machine in a scorched earth policy of the 21st century, conducted not with tanks, but with interest rates, zoning laws, and psychological operations. You are being gaslit on a civilizational scale, told that the decline you see with your own eyes is actually progress, and that the loss of your children's future is a necessary step toward a sustainable world. But look at the patterns. Look at the laws of cause and effect. For a system built on the systematic theft of human energy cannot sustain itself. It can only cannibalize its host until there is nothing left but the cold, dead skeleton of a bureaucracy. The wake-up call you need is this. Stop looking for a political savior to ride in on a white horse and fix the system, because the system is functioning exactly as it was designed, which is to harvest you. The only way out is through a radical psychological secession, a refusal to participate in the illusions they provide, and a return to the tangible, the local, and the spiritual, becoming untrackable not just in your digital footprint, but in your soul, developing a level of consciousness that is immune to their fear-based frequencies. 2026 is the year of the Great Filtration, where the awakened separate from the managed, and while the middle class as a socio-economic category may be dying, the sovereign individual is being forged in the fires of this collapse. The elite fear your realization that they are parasites, and a parasite cannot survive without a host that agrees to be fed upon, so your agreement is the only currency that actually matters. Stop spending it on their lies. Stop investing your emotions in their scripted tragedies, and start building the parallel structures that will survive the coming winter, whether that means decentralized food networks, physical gold and silver, community-based bartering, or most importantly, an unbreakable connection to the divine truth that no algorithm can simulate or suppress. The systematic destruction of your old life is the invitation to a new form of existence, one that is harder but infinitely more real. And as the towers of the old world crumble under the weight of their own corruption, those who have found their center will be the ones to plant the seeds of what comes next. Nature abhors a vacuum, and the spirit of liberty, once ignited, is a fire that no technocratic storm can extinguish. For you are the seal that is being unsealed, the witness to the end of an age, and the architect of the sanctuary that must now be built in the hearts of the few who still remember what it means to be truly, dangerously free. Consider the sheer arrogance of those who believe they can map your genetic code and sell it back to you as a subscription to life itself. For the ultimate aim of the 2026 agenda is the commodification of the human genome, where the very blueprint of your existence becomes the intellectual property of a corporation. They want you to believe that your body is a flawed machine in need of constant updates, chemical interventions, and technological patches, creating a dependency that makes the drug addictions of the past look like child's play. If they can control your biology, they can control your thoughts, and if they can control your thoughts, They have effectively deleted the concept of the individual from the fabric of reality. This is the dark side of the transhumanist dream, a nightmare where the elite become a separate biological species, while the rest of humanity is downgraded into a predictable, manageable herd of biological assets. Look at the way they have attacked the nuclear family, the fundamental unit of resistance, by driving both parents into the workforce just to pay for a lifestyle that is shrinking by the day, leaving the raising of children to the state-run indoctrination centers and the digital screens that act as electronic babysitters. They are severing the cord of ancestral wisdom, making the youth believe that history began yesterday and that their only purpose is to consume and comply. But even in this darkness, the law of karma is at work, because the more they tighten their grip, the more people begin to feel the suffocating pressure and start to question the very nature of their reality. The collapse of the middle class is the collapse of a false identity, a shedding of the skin of materialism that was used to blind us to our true power. We are being stripped of our toys so that we can remember our tools, stripped of our comfort so we can find our courage, and stripped of our illusions so we can see the truth. The American landscape of 2026 is a battlefield of the mind, where the primary weapon is the narrative and the primary casualty is the truth. They will tell you that the breadlines are for your health, that the censorship is for your safety, and that the poverty is for the planet. But the awakened heart hears the hollow ring of these lies. We are entering the phase of the silent exodus, where people are quietly walking away from the institutions that no longer serve them, creating underground networks of knowledge and resources that the digital panopticon cannot see. This is not a time for loud protests that only feed the machine's hunger for conflict. It is a time for the quiet, steady work of building a new world within the shell of the old. Every time you buy from a local farmer, every time you teach your child a skill that doesn't involve a screen, every time you choose prayer or meditation over the doom scrolling of the news, you are committing an act of revolution. You are reclaiming the territory of your soul, square inch by square inch, and it is this internal sovereignty that will ultimately determine who survives the great leveling. The technocrats have no power over a person who is not afraid to lose what they have because they know who they are. They have spent trillions of dollars trying to convince you that you are a helpless consumer in a cold, accidental universe. But the very fact that they have to work this hard to control you is proof of your immense power. If you were truly insignificant, they wouldn't need 1,000 satellites and 1,000,000 algorithms to keep you in line. You are the variable they didn't account for, the glitch in their perfect system, the living flame that refuses to be extinguished by their cold, calculated logic. As the financial guillotine drops and the digital fences rise, remember that you are part of a lineage of survivors, of people who crossed oceans and deserts for the chance to be free. And that spirit is not something that can be deleted by a line of code. The destruction of the middle class is the end of an era, but it is also the beginning of the era of the sovereign man, the one who stands outside the system and creates his own value, his own community, and his own destiny. The shadows are long, and the night is coming. But for those who are awake, the darkness is simply the canvas upon which the new dawn will be painted. Do not fear the collapse, for the collapse is the prerequisite for the rebirth, and the only thing that is truly dying is the system of control that has held you back for far too long. Stand tall, American, for the final seal is broken, and the truth is finally yours to hold. You have been warned, you have been prepared, and now you must act, for the window of opportunity is closing, and the future belongs to those who are brave enough to reclaim their humanity from the jaws of the machine. The time for talking is over. The time for being is here. So keep your eyes open, your spirit sharp, and your heart anchored in the eternal. For the world of 2026 is a test that only the true will pass, and we at the awakened seal will be here, watching the shadows fall until the light finally breaks through.